Yep. Almost done.
Gosh, it's on. Fuck.
Ryan's kids on the team too, so you can watch him play.
Ryan Moore?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's a starter. He's pretty good.
I see picture of the stadium field installs.
The turf's down, yeah.
I guess I haven't been down there. I gotta take a look at
I
it.
know. I need to go too. I was gonna call Janelle, see if we
So
get.
they have like the stadium seats.
I
Like
don't know if the bleachers are up yet, but
bleachers?
they've got their locker rooms in, the field
Wow.
turfs in. I'll see if
Ready?
Janelle has a chart. Yeah, it looks.
Okay. Good afternoon, welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. Just like before we start, wanted to welcome a couple of people who are joining us. Stefano, welcome. Stefano is going to be part of our team on a temporary basis, so good to have you with us. And Chief Fagan, our new fire chief, welcome. This is his first meeting of the city. Nice to have you here. Welcome to the team. Okay, looking at the agenda, the first item that's marked for discussion by the staff is A11 on page 2. Are there any items prior to that we need to discuss, or anyone has questions on? Okay, A11.
Yes, Your Honor, this is what I'm handling. So this is an asset replacement for some of our network equipment. And I wanted to call attention to it because it's not a budgeted request. We were looking at putting in the budget for next fiscal year for replacement, but as we were taking a look at the 5-year cost analysis on it, we discovered that it's actually not only less expensive to replace it now, but there's some other added benefits to that. So we'd like to request that we purchase this equipment now in this fiscal year. I will also note that there's a 4.5-month lead time on it. And some recent equipment we purchased for the library actually took 10 months to get in. So it's even possible it may not be until next fiscal year, but we'd like to get that going now just because there is a $15,000 cost savings over 5 years
And it's an item that was going to be in the budget for next year.
for next year. Correct.
Okay, any questions on that item? Go ahead, Grant.
I would just say Terrell shared with me the hardware specs that are comprising this procurement, and I mean, this really seems like a smart move in terms of network protection. So I certainly endorse this.
Any other questions? Is that pretty clear for everybody? Okay, the remainder of page 2 and page 3, there's nothing marked for discussion by the staff, but any questions on those?
Yes.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, could we have at least an update or report on B1 regarding the logging at the public services site? Again, my first blush, that seems like a lot of money for what's over there. So maybe there's something there that I'm not really thinking about. So if you could give us a
You bet. And so,
2 cents on that.
yep. And so this is the timber stand over off of Deer Valley. It's adjacent to the public service new building site. In that timber stand, we have about 10 to 12 acres of heavy timber. And so these are very large trees. This is the same contractor that performed the work at Legion. They did an incredible job. We want to be sensitive to the neighbors through there and do a good job. So just for reference, the Legion Park contract was 20 acres, and that was for just over $172,000. We're looking at 10 to 12 acres, and they're quoting us just over $72,000. So they're basically extending that same contract. We are saving money because they don't have to haul the wood chips off site. We're going to take them, we're going to remulch them into the ground and then kind of fix up that area adjacent to the neighbors.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation. I guess I'll drive over there. I don't think most of us realize how much timber
There's quite a bit.
is there. We drive by it, but
Yeah,
that's a lot more than,
The issue we're running into, we have a major stormwater issue through there.
okay.
And it's cutting into the bank, and we had to do a stormwater study before we had a permanent plan. So this is kind of the next step. And then the site development of the park will continue.
So is all this being done on the west side of 44th Street? Or some being done on the
West
east side?
44th Street. just south of Deer Valley.
Right.
That neighborhood, and then the public service new building site, it's directly south of that.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Are we good on that item? Any other items for discussion on pages 2 or 3? Okay, on page 4, F2 is marked for discussion. Any questions on any item prior to that, prior to F2? Right, we'll go to F2. That's Tom?
Yes, I just wanted to, give the council a chance to ask questions if you had any regarding the needs analysis. I know it wasn't the expectation that you would get through that document and have questions for me today, but just to make awareness to you and the public that the document has been finalized. I sent an email early this morning that is the full final version to be received and filed. Once the council receives and files that, we will then use that and distribute it to those that would find it necessary or like to use it for housing related programs at the state level or the local level, or just for general information. A lot of the developers call the city and want information, and this will provide a great deal of it, provide some guidance for them in future endeavors. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Tom on that? Go ahead.
Have to look at it.
Just out of curiosity, is it on the website yet, or should we?
No,
soon,
we
or-
would like the council to receive and file it before
Then-
we distribute it. It is the final draft document, so.
Okay.
Was there anything unexpected that you saw in that?
No, no.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, go Grant and then Steve.
Yeah, Tom, so was there any primary high-level takeaways that you detected in the report? And I guess I'm trying to sharpen how I'm gonna read the copy that you sent us. But anything that was top level to you as a takeaway?
Well, I think the biggest and takeaway would be that there's not one specific area of housing that is needed. It's across the board. Whether it's affordable housing or single family, it's all needed. The report highlights and identifies specifically how much of each would be necessary to grow to the population that we project over time. So that would be probably the biggest takeaway, is that as we talk about needs across the community, we need housing in every area. So.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, my comment is, we've all just received this, and I've certainly personally not had a chance to take a look at it at all. So I think we have an opportunity at a future meeting to ask questions or make comments on it. Might be appropriate as well. So.
Okay. Will we have that opportunity? Yeah.
We can make sure that that's available.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Mayor Nick, can
Yes,
I
go
just
ahead.
add just a few comments?
Yeah.
I think the housing study really is a precursor to a lot bigger conversation that adds not only to the housing needs, which when you talk about having more questions, diving down deeper into this study is really going to give us the opportunity to talk about big picture of what the city of Marion needs, what population, what groups of people, affordable housing, single family, duplex, those types of things, where they'll go and where are the appropriate places to make it a healthy neighborhood. So there's far more discussion.
To add to that, this document will be the basis for the residential conversation that we have with the development of the comprehensive plan.
Sure.
I think it's going to help inform how we would like to see development occur, to Kim's point about how neighborhoods are created that are livable, walkable, and generational. So there'll be a lot more to this regard. And then also, we're hoping to have some follow-up information provided to the council just on what's going on with housing. This is kind of like the first step. There's a couple local community groups that are meeting metro-wide to discuss housing. There's an Alliance for Equitable Housing that's been doing some work. And I think the information that they're doing and the work that they're doing would be good for the council to hear and understand. And so that may be a future council agenda item as well.
Thank you. I like when I hear big picture planning, and I think others up here too. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Would it be helpful for the council if we circulated the PowerPoint presentation that was provided by Maxfield, just as you're reading it? Because the presentation that was given a couple meetings ago is the high level overview of this. So if you have that as kind of a Cliff Notes version as you're going through. So this is actually the final version that we got following that presentation. So that's
That's a good
helpful.
idea. Thank you. Okay, any other questions on that? All right, any other items on page 4 then? There are 3 items there that aren't marked. Any questions on those? All right, then page 5, no items are marked for discussion. Any questions on those? Okay, it looks like page 6, every item is marked for discussion. So
Made up for it.
we'll start with engineering E1.
We'll start off with an easy one. So with the UTV ordinance that was passed, we were putting together our map for the public to consume. And in that, it was basically 35 mile an hour and below as where you were allowed to drive in a UTV. And we found out that we had a 40 mile an hour zone in the city and no ordinance to establish said speed limit. So this is cleaning that up. So the sign's already up. So there's no speed study done. We're just getting this so that was part of what was there in Lynn County before we annexed it in.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so when I read that, I was a little confused. So this is actually just catching up with the signage
Correct,
that is already on 44th.
correct.
Are we contemplating any change in that section that's 40 mile an hour?
We are not.
Okay.
So to that point, at such time we have our public services campus built out, would that then necessitate a future change?
Then we could do a speed study and look at it, but having that area mostly rural, we'll look at the turning movements and stuff, but I don't think we'll need to change that.
Okay.
But that's a future conversation. Right now, I'm trying to make it so if a police officer pulls someone over for going above 40 miles an hour, it's a legal sign.
It's always good to keep the police chief happy.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Yes.
So will that stretch be added to the area that UTVs are not allowed to?
It's already shown that on the map.
It is already showing that? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, F1. Back to Tom.
Yes, as a part of the plaza project conversation, I think it was noted at our meeting that part of the recommendation that was provided for and then the council moved forward with was the act of taking the caboose as a part of the project and relocating it to its own particular spot. We've tentatively identified that area east of 31st Street by the VFW along the trail, which was the original alignment of the railroad through the community. Right here and before us is a scope of services with RDG to complete that work. Where we would get with this would be a preliminary design for the landing spot of the caboose, and then also a 3D rendering that would establish what that would look like on site. And so we'd work with our steering committee to put that together and get that preliminary concept developed. From there, we would need preliminary and final design, no different than the larger plaza project, but this gets that conversation started and would provide us an opportunity to illustrate conceptually what we see the caboose looking like along that corridor.
Questions? Go ahead.
So this would just be for the caboose and would not be designing any type of railroad themed park there. This would be just a landing spot for the caboose type of thing, or is it more
So a part of the project would include the limits of the improvements, the location, orientation, hardscaping, softscaping, maintenance, and staff equipment access, and then interpretive signage, the look and feel. Yeah, this would create that park-like atmosphere.
But would it design the whole park
Conceptually
area?
design it. If
Like
you'll
from
recall, what I would
31st to
equate it to
35th?
is when we did the conceptual plan for the plaza, where it showed the ice loop and all of the components just kind of generally laid
Sure.
out. That's what we're gonna get to with this. If that's accepted by the council, then we would move to the preliminary design and final design. So it's just like the first step in getting that plan in place.
And that, so that would be from 31st to 35th, that whole corridor along there, or just a one little section?
It would
by
be like a
31st?
pocket park area for it.
So it's
yeah.
not the whole?
Not that whole area. That's not what this is envisioning.
Was the parks, was that envisioned to be the whole corridor there or just a smaller area?
Yeah, what we had envisioned would be a small linear park, parallel with the Grantwood Trail, kind of behind where the Legion is, south of where the
Right.
Legion building is.
But are you foreseeing that from 31st to 35th, taking up that whole narrow
It-
right of way area?
We don't envision it being
Being
that
okay.
long.
I
We
always
envision
envisioned it
about
that big.
a
So.
half an acre.
Yeah.
Approximately about a half an
Gotcha.
acre right there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So is Parks Board or the Parks Department going to be involved in the
Mhm.
visioning of that?
Yep.
What RDG is doing or,
That's correct.
okay,
And they've already been made aware that we're looking at doing this and they are in favor of it.
okay.
Yep.
So it'll be more, I think what Will's saying, it'll be more comprehensive than just
Just the
relocating the caboose and setting it down there. It's gonna it's gonna give us some idea what the whole thing's gonna look like.
Correct.
Really?
It's not covering, I mean, that's about a quarter mile of trail.
No, I'm saying the
Yeah.
pocket park,
Correct. That's what.
whatever you envision to be the pocket park, what that's all going to look like.
It's going to include not just the caboose, it's going to include other amenities as part of the park to complement the caboose.
Right, but this RDG plan is gonna at least conceptually show that.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
That's exactly,
Yeah.
and that was when we did the community survey on the plaza. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear was there wasn't a lot of awareness about what's going to happen with that. So this is our next step in developing the plan so we can share with the community. This is the vision for that.
That's
For
the
that-
reason I'm asking the
Yep.
question, is
Yep.
because we don't wanna just move it and in my opinion, move it and set it down there and then have
Yep.
have the community then start to question, what did we just do? You know, like, we wanna be able to see the vision for it so that what they supported, you know, they still continue to support as it's
Correct.
gonna be, because that's what we've said, it's gonna be, here it's out of context in a park where it's part of a railroad theme park, it's gonna make more sense and
Yep.
it's gonna actually be better. So
To develop.
we
that
want,
con-
we want to
right.
meet expectations.
That's exactly right on cue, Mayor. And that's to go through the conceptual planning for it. So we can share with the community, hey, this is the plan of what we're looking at doing. And market that out and then start going down and obviously engage the council as that process. And then from there, continue on with the phase of the different design elements and actually bidding it out and getting costs.
Thank you.
I'd also add that, doing this design, it'll obviously come to the council. And if there's further refinement to Will's point, I mean, that can very well be a part of the conversation. It just wasn't the initial. But that doesn't mean that process can't happen. I mean, I want to be clear that, that's something that the council can say, hey, this is great, but let's spread this out a little bit. Then
Yeah.
by all means,
I mean,
that's at your leisure.
Yeah, it can happen in phases, and we can relocate the caboose, but I think that the time that that's done, we need to at least be able to show what the full vision is going to be in concept, just in concept at least, so that people know there's more coming and it's not just, oh, we kind of pushed it out of the way over in that corner and just, so Steve had something and then Grant.
Yeah, just, Tom, does my memory serve me correct that the plaza project budget includes the cost to relocate the caboose? Not anything else, but I thought we talked about the cost
Yeah.
to relocate was part of that budget. Is that correct?
I would need to verify that, but I recall the conversation, but I can't say right at this moment. But, yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I remember that's why I thought we
Wanna
had that
verify 'cause
conversation. So I
That was
wanna-
part of the conversation, was trying to get a bid for it, because this isn't something that, you know, I
Right.
can look to Mike and say, hey, what's it cost to move a caboose? So I think
Well-
there might have been a small number placed in there, but that's something that we've even talked about internally about really needing to understand. So,
Yeah, Coonrod was the company that helped us tremendously last time, I think probably almost at no cost to move that in there
Oh,
and
really?
locate that. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still wanting to participate, but anyway, Coonrod did that last time. But again, double check on that.
yep, I can do
I
that.
think just for verification so that we can understand that then does not have to be a cost
Mhm.
when we talk about the new caboose park, that cost is not part of that when it's already included in this other, in the plaza project.
Yep.
Thanks.
Grant?
Thank you. Tom, there's two scope elements, the initial planning and illustration, which will give us the concept. And then there's the detailed design and drawing scope. I note that the correspondence from RDG says that first item, the concept, would be completed within 30 days of notice to proceed. So I would guess that would be like in November.
Correct.
And work item two, the detailed, more detailed documentation. Clearly that's necessary in order to finalize where the caboose needs to be put. But I guess I'm thinking about the caboose has to move in order to prevent or allow the plaza project to go forward. And so having this finalized seems to be pretty important to do yet this fall.
So the
And
way
I'm thinking about both elements from where it is coming to where it is going.
Yeah.
It's got to get moved.
and I think to some of the conversation that we just had, the constraints of that plan would drive the work product for the deliverable on work item number 2.
Okay.
So we'll have it's very similar to the Plaza project, just a smaller footprint, is that we did that conceptual design and we had a cost estimate associated with that. And then we did preliminary design and there were some tweaks that caused it to go up and down in different areas. We would do that. And then final design would get you to the construction plan. So depending on how big it is, it may be, we only complete one phase of it to move the caboose in there. The council may decide, let's just do it all. And that's a budgetary item. And I know there is a CIP project sheet submitted as a part of the long range planning. So we're just trying to jumpstart that conversation so that the public knows that, hey, we understand this was a conversation and we're moving it forward. And we want to make sure that we're responsive to that. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, F2, Tom?
So F2, I don't really have anything to discuss with the council. It was just, it's the second reading of the rezoning ordinance. Just if there's questions on Thursday, I'd be happy to answer those, or tonight if you have questions, but.
Any questions on that rezoning ordinance? Everyone's still okay with that? Okay, F3, Tom?
And item number 3 is similar. There's, this is a large rezoning. We've had limited comments from the public. Sometimes I think it's just because it's very vast and covers a lot of the community. We did a number of outreach segments to provide feedback, but just wanted to have a slide available on Thursday if somebody does have questions or comments.
Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, after rezoning the other two, have there been many revisions to those since then?
When the revisions that I would say have been caught by internally, like where maybe there was a lot that was a detention basin and should have been zoned something else.
Gotcha.
But
So
we
nothing-
haven't had any major issues where a developer came in or a resident came in and said, hey, this is a real problem.
Sure.
So,
Just curious.
I mean, there's been a couple questions raised, but
Sure.
nothing major.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, F4.
Tripped. So on Thursday, there's going to be a public hearing regarding an amendment to the zoning code regarding parking and loading regulations, and then also to the setbacks in the M1 and M2 district. The first portion of the ordinance is really, it's pretty straightforward. It's just repealing the availability or removing the availability in our code to allow for gravel to be used in our manufacturing districts. Currently, seal coat and gravel can be used. As the picture previously illustrated, it can be overgrown with weeds rather quickly. It doesn't really show well for the community. We did do a review of our comparables and even went outside of our comparables. And we are literally one of the only communities that allow it still. And so we're moving forward with a recommendation to proceed to not allow gravel in the industrial districts. Planning Commission reviewed this and approved of it 7-0. We also went to the Home Builders Association Developers Council meeting, identified this along with other initiatives that we're moving forward, including design standards. We had a couple comments. The biggest comment and the biggest question, and I'm sure we'll get this across the board, is, well, I have a gravel lot. What can I do with my gravel lot that I currently have? We're not out there to regulate what's currently existing. It's illegal. It's non-conforming use. It's just that if you had a major expansion, or let's say the building gets destroyed and gets rebuilt, we're going to want to see a hard surface be applied to that building. So, and most new development, this isn't a real big concern. We've had a couple that have put in gravel, and you can tell when you drive by it that it's gravel and not hard surface, and it has that look and feel. So this was just something that's been brought forward. We noticed and are moving forward to the city council for review. The next one, and to Will's point earlier on the rezoning, as we went through the process of rezoning wards 1 and 3, we were identifying and talking with a lot of the industrial developers. And it was brought to our attention that with the new setbacks that were being proposed, that we were going to create a lot of non-conforming uses in our older industrial areas that had smaller lots. And so to respond to that, what we did is proposing to amend the code to allow for a reduced setback on those smaller lots. And this will really help to not create as many non-conforming lots and buildings in the old industrial areas, and then allow for a little easier development of smaller lots in our newer industrial areas. So really goes from a 25-foot front yard to a 12-foot and a 15-foot side yard, or a corner side to a 12. So pretty straightforward. I think the development community appreciated this. They didn't have comments either here nor there at the meeting. Any questions?
Questions for Tom on this? Go ahead.
A comment. With the gravel going away, I know you said it's grandfathered in if you have a gravel lot, but I think it'd be good for the city to set a precedent to pave our gravel parking lot uptown now, since we're changing the ordinance.
I think that's a great idea.
Hint, hint.
We actually talked about that as we were going through this agenda item last week.
It's grandfathered.
It is in
I
the,
know
it is
it's
in the CIP for ranking.
Excellent. Let's get it done.
Anything else on this item? Okay, it's good to see that we're paying attention to the industrial areas too. Reaching higher. That's great. All right, that takes care of F5 also, right? And F6. right? That takes care of everything. All right, look at that. We're a minute ahead of schedule. Okay, the next item is a discussion regarding establishment of a Marion Airport Visioning Team. Who's got that item?
I'll start it, Your Honor, and I'll pass it off to Councilman Harper.
Okay.
So we've had this as an item before the council. Last meeting, we had some feedback as part of the discussion and direction. So that was greatly appreciated. From that, Councilman Harper and the airport subcommittee and staff worked on taking that feedback and soliciting names of other residents that we can reach out to and incorporate into the airport visioning team. So on the slide before you are those names, and I'll kick it over to Councilman Harper to fill in the blanks.
Well, I just would have to say, and in your packet, there is a summary listing of the prospective team, their representation, and then their contributing areas of expertise that will, I think, help shape the discussion. But the other important feature to this is that we want to draw in some additional representation as we move through the overall process. And as it's indicated in the packet, this will include some of the airport tenants, city consultants that we already have on board, Linmar and Marion Independent School District. I envision that they have to weigh in at some point for discussions because already through my conversations with some of the prospective members, the notion of making this also an educational resource should fit more crisply in our vision. And then finally, there will be undoubtedly things that come up that we're going to have to reach out to other elements of our community in order to inform the discussion. So I think this is a pretty solid group to work with, and others will be dropped or drawn in as the need arises. So to that end, I guess I'm really looking for support of this so that we can get this group scheduled and underway, and we're already trying to build out an incremental schedule of work or topics as we want to try to get some interim work products created for feedback, not only to the airport committee, but also to council. So.
Okay, any questions or comments on that? Anything else to add? Ryan, that's it.
If the council is supportive of it, we would ask for permission to put it on the council agenda for Thursday for formal appointment.
Appreciate the additional work and effort that was done on that. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the final item that's marked for discussion is the overview of commercial property on Tower Terrace Road corridor, long-term planning efforts. Tom again. This is a Tom show tonight.
Yes. So a few weeks back, we had a conversation regarding a proposed comprehensive plan amendment along Tower Terrace Road. And what was born out of that, I think, was a desire to really understand kind of what the commercial development options were for the Tower Terrace Road corridor and kind of what the long range plans were. So both high level commercial development as well as, you know, what do we have in inventory currently. So I'm just going to walk through a few slides, talk a little bit about the comp plan first. Then I'm going to talk about what we have currently zoned, and then I'll maybe talk about individual pieces. And if you have questions along those, please feel free to ask. And then at the end of it, I'll just talk a little bit about some trends. Will can probably help me out. And then also talk about next steps as it relates to how we proceed from here. So the area that we're looking at is the west side of Marion. The commercial area, which the commercial areas are identified in red along the right-hand side of their screen, would be this area right here. So this is Winslow Road. Tower Terrace Road is running along the center line here. The red areas are the areas that are land use designated for commercial for, just for reference, this is Albernet Road, 10th Street, and Winslow. So our land use plan, and you can see it's kind of illustrating some areas that are blocked, more specific, parcel specific along Tower Terrace Road. And those are areas which are in the community and zoned commercial. So as we've made amendments to the land use map and changed land uses to zoning or to commercial, we amend our future land use plan. The areas where you see some more curved lines, nothing very specific, that's the areas that are not zoned commercial, but are future land use designated for commercial. So what that is essentially saying is if I'm developer A and I'm going to want to come to the community and find out what areas of the community would support commercial development, I would pull out the future land use map. And in this instance, I can see that the corner, all four corners of the corner of the intersection of Albernet Road and Tower Terrace are designated for commercial development. And then east of there are portions along the corridor that are also designated for commercial development. So as you go east from that intersection, you can see virtually everything to 10th Street is designated for commercial development. And then as you go past the school, you get over to where Winslow Road goes north. The area of the former, one of the locations for the former Y site was identified. That area was also zoned commercial. So there's some property. So that's the property on the west side of the community that is designated for commercial. The east side of the community, and we kind of zeroed in, and we had a lot of land use changes in our comp plan, so that's why this map looks a little different. And just for reference, this roundabout here is Lucor and Tower Terrace. Tower Terrace extends all the way to Highway 13. Highway 13 is the north-south road. This is the area where the neighborhood in Indian Creek was adopted. So when we zoned that area, we did a larger land use plan and amended the comprehensive plan to reflect that zoning, and then also went out and really tried to target from a future perspective what the area along Highway 13 would look like, as well as what would be a future intersection of 44th extended to Tower Terrace Road. And then, we're just reflecting the neighborhood of Indian Creek in this vicinity. So there's a number of areas that are future designated for commercial development in the future. The heavy dark line is our current annexation. That's our corporate limit. So you can see we're trying to look out into the future and identify areas and their future land uses. So again, as a developer would come to the community, if they would be wanting to develop commercially, multifamily, single family, they would use this as a guide as the property and the locations for the city is looking to see that into the future. As you might notice, 44th Street is not constructed north of 35th. So this is all projected roadways out to Highway 13, Indian Creek Way. This is the further extension of Tower Terrace to Highway 13. So we're really trying to identify the major arterials, collectors, or major arterials as it relates to future development. At this point, and from a comprehensive plan perspective, we don't get much more granular in land use and transportation. Now, what we have done internally, and I have a good example of on the next slide, is we've went to sub-area plans. So the sub-area plans, the neighborhood in Indian Creek, and we could talk about this as a planning document for quite a long period of time. It really lays out in very specific format what is going to happen south of Tower Terrace and east of 35th. So this plan is conceptualized, but the land uses that are identified in the legend, that zoning exists today. So if somebody wants to develop this property, they have to develop to this very specific plan. It's about a 35 or 40 page document. It talks about how the buildings lay out, the height of the buildings, the uses in the buildings, and is very, very specific. Now, we don't particularly have anybody that's interested in developing out here, but the land is all owned by the development community and they are tied to this plan. Anything they do that is different than this has to come back through the city council. So that leads me to talk a little bit about what ground we have that is readily available and zoned for development. So here, this is just a snapshot right out of our zoning map. Starting again, I'll start over at Alburnett and Tower Terrace.
This is what you handed out.
Yes, correct. So I handed out this so you could have this and take away and you can have it for your own purposes. But the brighter red is a community business district. You can see that's the northeast corner of Tower Terrace and Alburnett. Moving east, you have the Y site here, Unity Point. There's a number of lots that are available on Tower Terrace on the south side. On the north side, we have this lighter pinkish, which is a local business district. It just doesn't allow for some of the heavier uses that the community business district allows for. Again, you have the Winslow Road piece. This is zoned. It's preliminary platted, which means if somebody comes in and wants to develop it commercially, they literally would bring in a final plat and they can develop with uses that are in that district by right. So it's called, they're entitled to that zoning. And then as we continue out here to 35th, this lighter area is the PUD. And as I was illustrating that sub area plan, the neighborhood in Indian Creek, we just identify that as a PUD because it's a mix of uses, but that entire area has that availability for commercial mixed use, multifamily, and so on and so forth. So all told, we have 120 acres of commercial office mixed use space. We have 96 acres that are available and no existing structures. We have 4 preliminary plats, which is kind of deceiving because some of them are large preliminary plats that haven't been developed down to the individual lots, but we have the areas that are platted, which means the groundwork for infrastructure has been laid, not installed, but like in planning. So we know where sewer and water is going to go on those preliminary plats. And then we have 2 final plats. I would say some of the easiest property to develop commercially on Tower Terrace Road would be between Alburnett and 10th Street on the south side, where Tim Mooney's been developing over the years by Barrel House and new coffee shop. And then west of the YMCA, there are 3 or 4 lots that are preliminary platted, and south of Tower Terrace, in that same vicinity, there's a couple lots that are preliminary platted. Now, as we look at that and we say we got a number of lots that are available, we've got rooftops, why isn't that developing? Well, there's a couple different scenarios, and this is just perspective from what we're seeing in the industry. I'm sure the real estate folks could dive down deeper in this, particularly the commercial folks. But a huge part of this is traffic counts. The traffic counts on Tower Terrace Road are not going to drive a lot of new development. They're just not there. The banks are in a position where they're hesitant right now to enter that market. And frankly, what we're seeing is just an all around change in the retail market as a whole. So, we used to see a CVS or a Walgreens get built on any corner that had 2 arterials that were going into it. We haven't seen that happen in a long time. Call them a mid-box. The mid-box is not happening. We don't see that development. Big box pretty much is non-existent. So when we showed the commercial development along Highway 13, large lot, envisioning, having some box stores. 10 years ago, that was the whole idea, is that you would have box stores along a major arterial. Well, that's just not happening, not even the major metropolitan areas. So that how retail and commercial is developing has changed so much and is still changing, causes a lot of land just to sit. The other was, I could walk through the community development department and engineering. We work with a lot of these landowners. We know them personally. Some are motivated, some are not motivated, some don't need to be motivated, and they're just going to sit and wait for the right project. So there are a whole host of reasons why some of that ground sits and some of it moves quicker. And some of it is we just can't control. So that's just a little perspective on what we're seeing in the market. And some of I think the biggest thing is the market itself, and we all know that interest rates are rising and there's hesitation on investment. And so there's a real what's going to happen in a couple of years going on. So there's that component to it as well. But anyway, that's just some of the trends we're seeing in the conversations we're having internally with folks that own commercial property. So that leads to the question of next steps. And I think, you know, as we continue to do what we do on a daily basis, before this meeting, I met with a property owner who has ground along Terrace Road. Their question was, and my favorite question is, what does the city see happening on my property? And they asked us that quite a bit. And so we use the tools that we just illustrated to kind of identify what the thought process is in the city. But I can tell you that one of the questions that question they asked us is very difficult to answer, just because the change in the markets have been so different. 10 years ago, it would have been so much easier to answer that question. And just right now, it's just not something we have the question for. And so it's just difficult. But just as a good snip, we did take this drone photo. I don't know who took this photo, but this is Terrace Road from about Newcastle looking east. And you can see the Y building this is the Y right here. But you can see this ground, and so this is Albernet Road and the roundabout. So this ground is all commercially available right now. And this ground is zoned ag, but land use designated for commercial. So it's not like we don't have the available property for commercial development. So what we continue to do is to collaborate with the development community, just like we did today. We meet with property owners. You know, Mike and I and Darren, we sit down with a lot of them almost on an annual basis. The Vaughn family, who owned a lot of the ground that was where the neighborhood Indian Creek, we used to have an ongoing, about every 18 months, the whole family would come in. We'd talk to them about what's going on in the community. So we have a really good relationship with most of the folks that own ground out here. And so that's one thing we do. We've talked about the neighborhood Indian Creek sub-area plan. I think another great example of how we try to ensure that we're ready for development is the sub-area plan that we did for Rookwood. And for those of you that are not familiar with that, I'd be happy to get that to you, or we could have a quick synopsis of that plan here. But it's out east of, it's out on the east city limits, north of the airport, north of 151. And we worked with the developer as well as the landowners in that area to develop a long-range plan that is not comp plan level, but very specific. And so we have it looks very similar to the neighborhood Indian Creek. So we have a plan for that. And it involves a lot of mixed use and a lot of commercial property. It also reflected the approach zone as a part of the airport zoning that we did. And that was a critical piece to that. And the developer is engaged with it. You know, they're responding to, their plans are responding to that, which is exactly what we like to see. So there's no surprises. We're not we're not having disagreements on zoning when that level of planning occurs. And then finally, where we're at today is we're starting that down the road to updating our comprehensive plan. It's 12 years old. It needs updated. That future land use map does need updated, and we'll be starting that in the spring. So after the first of the year, I envision that we'll be moving forward with soliciting an RFP for consultant to get that started in the late spring. So did I answer all of your guys' questions as it relates to commercial development along the corridor? Is there anything I missed or?
So, do you think, I mean, I know you talked about traffic counts in that area, but when that next segment is open, is that next year? When it's paved?
So I
He's
just
telling-
asked Darren this question, and Mike, I don't know if you want to provide that answer or not, but that might be helpful.
Yeah, so C to Albernet, that entire project is funded. However, it's been multiple years. So the section right now, that's the grading and utility package, that is basically from Meadow Knolls to Albernet Road. They get 2 construction seasons. So they have the entire next year that they can still work on that project and not be
The
done just with
grade
the grading,
or
just the grading.
just to grade it?
And then we have to yet pave it. So we're talking.
Oh, I've been telling people it's gonna be paved next year.
That's
what I
what I thought too.
Originally, the contractor told us they were gonna have all the dirt work done
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think that's gonna happen.
So, but that's not all the way to C Avenue.
That's only to Meadow Knolls. And then there's a project that'll be the grading from Meadow Knolls to C. And then it'll come back later and do a paving package after that. So there's still, even though that's funded, there's still
So we still
steps to
have
go
a few
through.
years before we see that completed, because, I mean, that's when I think the traffic counts will change, is when that opens all the way to C Avenue, and then I think you'd see more interest in commercial development along there, but. Okay. Any questions for Tom? Go ahead.
How does this align? And I know Kim's been involved in this a long time as well, but I mean, this is obviously a partner road and we're going to be impacted on available, what people want to do based on, as the road completes and as we come through. I mean, I envision this, it's not a Collins Road, but it potentially, we don't know what it's going to look like down the way. I mean, we've got an interchange on 380 and we're going all the way to 13. So if you're not on 100, you're here. The more commercial, we'll probably have more truck traffic, I would guess. If you have commercials, you've got to have things delivered there potentially, not necessarily, but could. So do we know, I mean, I know as this detours off west of C, you take it right through a neighborhood. So it seems like this is going to be pockets of kind of residential right up to the road. And then there's space for commercial, and then we're kind of into schools, and then we're kind of into residential. And then we've got some openness as we hit 13, but it's kind of a mix. Whereas I think of driving down, I guess, a Collins Road or Blair's Ferry, and you've got these houses sitting here and you think, oh, years ago, they were sitting on this road. And next thing you know, they're on this major commercial corridor. I also look at this and I know that even though some of that property is zoned and that there is a big resistance for some of those owners to actually work on those properties, which could limit as well the availability. But I like the direction that it's going, and I like even that neighborhood up there. I mean, I see, obviously we don't know what the future holds, but the mixed use components, the neighbor, the coffee shops, the small retail boutique, the service industry, and the neighborhoods close by, where everybody kind of harmoniously, not big commercial entities that would negatively impact neighborhoods.
As we develop our comprehensive plan, I think it'll be really important for us to understand from the consultants, the work that they do. And I think Kim has mentioned some resources as it relates to actual, what a real well-planned, connected neighborhood looks like. And I think it's going to be a little different than what folks envision. Commercial nodes are, from a planning perspective, are better than strip commercial. Creating another, I don't think anybody really wants to create another Collins Road. And so that conversation will be a part of that comp plan. Having the critical pieces of commercial that serve the neighborhoods is going to be very important, but what that looks like, I mean, the council will drive that conversation and be a part of that. So very important.
One more question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
From when you look at this from your perspective in advising us, or as you work on this, are there areas of concern right now? Are there flags we should be looking at? Are there things that we're looking ahead to where we're like?
So we just, a couple of weeks ago, the mayor, Tom, myself, our partners at Medco and the chamber had a lunch meeting to talk about where are those pockets. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing next as a follow-up to this presentation is kind of an overall assessment of the city to layer over the sub-area plans where we're confident in our current land use and zoning, and find out where those holes are, where those pockets are, where do we need to be focusing in on, and having that help, the housing study help inform the update to the comprehensive master plan, so we can understand where our threats and as well as our opportunities are. So that will be something that will be coming to you before we have a contract for a comp plan update. That was an action that we talked about at that lunch meeting that we had with the mayor and others. So. And then you want.
Yes, I'll just add one other comment, just kind of spearing off of what Tom just said, and that is, you've heard us talk about healthy neighborhoods. I think you've probably heard at least 3 times we've talked about what a healthy neighborhood looks like. Tower Terrace is very much going to be all of those mixes. And when you look at housing, really the purpose of a healthy neighborhood is that I'm able, if I live here, I can walk anywhere in 15 minutes to meet my needs. So whether that's a grocery store, whether that's going to the Y, whether that's going to a business, to, you know, clothing store, like all the little boutiques and those types of things. It really, we have to look at that, and where's transit? So, you know, to answer maybe a little more pinpointed to your question, Sarah, is Tower Terrace going to look like Collins Road? No. That is not, it's not a part of the study that we did at the MPO level. It's not a part of the study in either of our communities. It really is meant to be a healthy neighborhood and connecting communities and connecting people.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah,
Hey,
Tom,
Grant.
Tom, for this section of Tower Terrace that extends to the west from Albernet over to Meadow Knolls that's currently being worked on. Is there already a preliminary sub-area plan that's been developed for that?
So there's not one that's developed currently. We do have, and I think the council may recall, we entered into a contract with Cedar Rapids to do the Northwest sub-area plan. And so we've been working with them. We got the initial draft and we're providing feedback on that. And so we've got some work to do on that, but we're actually in a contract with Cedar Rapids to develop that area, but it's not to the degree upon which the neighborhood was.
Okay.
But right now, that whole area is land use designated for a little bitty piece of commercial and single family and some single family attached. And that obviously needs to be looked at more specifically. So as that project comes forward, we'll be narrowing in on that. And the council will see that as we move forward.
And when we put together this overall SWOT analysis of the community as it relates to land use opportunities or threats, those will be able to better identify things like that, Councilman Harper. Where do we need to be looking at? Where are we exposed? Where do we not have those land use protections in place or forward thinking regulations?
And that's, all of that gets to the foundation of my question, which was really at the earliest possible time, we can begin to set expectations for what that's going to be so that we don't end up in controversy that I think was experienced between Albernet Road and North 10th relative to what might be going in along Tower Terrace. Just my point is that the long range vision is shown at the earliest possible date to set those expectations for all stakeholders concerned.
And that's really going to be, I think this sub-area plan that Tom talked about with Cedar Rapids, that's going to help. But the importance of getting the comp plan going in spring and really hitting that fast and hard with an engagement process with the community to make sure that that plan has been informed by the community, by our elected officials, and that that then becomes the foundation for everything we do as it relates to zoning and future development.
Okay, anyone else? Anything else on that, Tom? I appreciate seeing us do. I mean, I feel like we're increasing our big picture planning and our 20,000 foot view planning. I think we've just been going so fast in the last few years that we haven't had the opportunity to just kind of do that. And that's going to help us to not be so reactive, and that we're, like Councilmember Harper said, setting the expectations far enough in advance that people coming to that area already know what to expect, and that it'll cause a lot less friction. And I think in the end, we'll be more proud of the city we're shaping. So thank you for all the work.
Mayor, if I can, sorry. So this was the last presentation that we had lined up following the council's, several meetings ago, there was a request from a developer to amend the comp plan. So it was that action item that started our provide a comp plan overview. We informed the council that we were going to have the housing study. And then this was the third part of that overall presentation series, if you will. So we've completed that as it relates to land use. The follow-up that we're going to be doing that you can expect next, and we haven't been able to establish a timeframe internally yet. We wanted to kind of get through some of these other things. Will be that overall SWOT analysis, for lack of a better term, of the community as it relates to the land use. So we'll have a map showing where we think the pockets are, where those threats would be. This is, Mayor, this is what we talked about during our lunch meeting. So that would be the next one that you would see in our presentation series as it relates to land use.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Anything else? Is that it on that one? Does that bring us to the end of the meeting? I believe it does. Closed session on Thursday. Okay, that brings us to the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you all. Have a good evening, and we will see you